Rough day, huh? Oh, good. What's the matter with your brother?
Since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
It's real. It's snow. Welcome to the end of the world here in Western New York. Not really, but snow season kind of is the end of all things for cyclists here in my area. And now is about the time where we're going to be buried under this white stuff for a long time. And just safety considerations kind of keep you from being outside sometimes. Like right now, it's not so bad out there. I'll see if I can get you out the window here. Right now you can see, I mean, this is a village road. I'll zoom in over there. We got a nice little bike path. It doesn't go super far, but they've got the shoulders and the parking areas and the bike paths and whatnot. Pretty reasonably plowed. It's only been snowing for about 48 hours total on and off. And not so bad now if you want to get out there and with some decent tires and some decent gear, you can stay warm. It's a little wet out there. It's kind of a discretionary thing. But as we get further into the winter time, it's just not safe to be on the road. A, because cars aren't expecting you. B, because they don't get the roads down to pavement, especially in my area where we just get a ton of snow off the lake. So that means trainer hate season. So in these boxes are 2 trainers. This one's my Kinetic trainer that I am shipping off that I sold to a gentleman in Nebraska. So have fun with that. And this is a trainer I bought that I'm actually sending back. So I'll talk about these 2. The Kinetic trainer was the rock and roll trainer. I really loved that trainer a lot. Basically, the unit on the rock and roll trainer, when you sat on the saddle and you were pedaling back and forth, it would sway. Nothing extreme, but probably between 10 to 15 degrees either way. It simulated the road feel in that you had to stabilize your core to kind of balance the bike. The bike's not going to fall over on the rock and roll trainer, but it does simulate that oscillation so that you can kind of feel what you would feel on the road. And then there was also a riser unit that you put your front wheel into that spun back and forth on the floor, or if you wanted to put it up on another riser or some kind of platform. So that basically you'd have to stabilize your handlebars in order to keep it straight. Now you're not going to fall off the bike, but to keep the bike straight, and if you were going to try to simulate the road, it's very similar without the momentum kind of keeping you straight. I liked it a lot better than a fixed rear wheel position. I've ridden both, and once I was used to the Kinetic, I actually liked it better. It was more comfortable for longer rides because it wasn't keeping your hips kind of locked in. I've noticed that if you get to hour 2.5, 3 and more on an indoor trainer, it just starts to get uncomfortable. Things start getting numb down there and your hips start to hurt a little bit and your back might see some pain. Even if you think you're in a good riding position or good posture, there's just nothing. Unless you're standing up periodically, and even then, you're just not you're not stretching out that area, and there's no changing up your position to keep areas of your hips and in your glutes and everything from getting numb or uncomfortable. So I really enjoyed the trainer, but I was ready to go for a smart trainer. And when I looked up the smart trainers through Kinetic, they don't play nice with my other equipment. They do not like Garmin. They were not going to support a lot of formats. I think I had to switch to like Polar equipment, and I've got Garmin pedals and all sorts of other stuff. And it was just kind of a deal breaker because I was a little worried going forward being able to use the smart trainer with other apps and whatnot. And the CycleOps app, I actually really liked that. So because it just didn't play well with others right now, maybe as they develop they will, I decided to go to a different platform. So I sold my trainer instead of buying the upgrade unit. But for those of you who are looking for, a real road feel, I would definitely recommend it. I talked a little bit with the buyer for my trainer, and he's super excited about it, and I know he's gonna love it. So what I bought was this. This is the CycleOps Magnus. This is the new smart trainer. This is like the consumer line smart trainer. I wanted something that would fold up, you know, small in the house. This Kinetic, I mean, that box is huge and it's in 5 different pieces right now. This is the size of the trainer plus box folded up. So obviously it takes up a little less room because I do usually put it in my living room in front of my TV and stuff. So I bought this. This was $600 and I'm actually sending it back. I'm not a big fan of the trainer. It's also, I think my particular unit is defective in terms of the way there is a weld point here. I'll actually open it up and show you, but this resistance unit is actually seated slightly crooked. So what's happening is that it's not, it's over tightening against the rear wheel, and you're getting too much resistance. It's actually unrideable. I'm a relatively strong rider, and I can't even calibrate the trainer against the CycleOps app because it takes me into zone 6, and I have to hold that for 2 minutes and maintain it at 18 miles an hour per the trainer, and there's just too much resistance on the rear wheel. So I'm gonna open this up and I'm gonna kind of show you what I'm talking about. You know, even in working order, I probably wouldn't be super happy with the trainer. It's a little bit light. I'm comparing it obviously to the Kinetic, which is very stable. It doesn't fold, but the thing is a tank, and I just didn't like how light it was. So I actually opted for the Powerbeam Pro, which I have used before. It's a little older. The model I bought was released in 2015, but it's more for I guess not professional use, but it's a more expensive retail trainer, and they have them on sale right now, probably because there's more releases forthcoming. But for about the same price or $100 more, depending on which model you get, I would recommend the Powerbeam Pro. So let me show you the Magnus and my criticisms. So this has since been repacked, but this is kind of how it comes. The trainer frame itself comes in the bottom of the box, and then the drive resistance unit comes into this cardboard box in between. So you do have to put it together. All right, so here's thing 1. Mind my Christmas tree. I do not like this. This is actually your, this is your, for your skewer to install your rear wheel. This is how you tighten it. It's spring loaded in there. I actually had to put this in. I didn't take it out from return because I was just aggravated. But you actually have to install this. This will come out if you take that off. So basically you tighten it, and then you have to overcome the resistance in the spring inside and lock this portion up against your skewer in your rear wheel. So I'm not a big fan of that. The Powerbeam Pro, which I will do a video on when it shows up, has a knob, which is basically it. You just tighten it, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and it'll click and lock into place. It seems just a little bit easier. You know, I had to put a lot of torque on here, and as a girl, you know, I mean, it wasn't hard, it wasn't impossible, but I really had to push a lot of my weight on there. It's not a deal breaker, but I don't like it about this trainer. So this is where you mount the drive unit. I think, but I'm not sure, I think this is what's crooked. If you look at it here, it's a little tough to tell because of the shape, but I think this is actually molded to the aluminum frame, slightly crooked. As you can kind of see, that space gets a little bit bigger. It's not squared off there. So when I put the resistance unit in there, it's exaggerated, and I'll put it on so that you guys can see, but it's not squaring up against the wheel. So when you tighten the knob against the rear wheel, it's over tightening on one side of the wheel and it's not quite tight on the other side. So you have this uneven rotation of your wheel, which is causing too much resistance. So I'll put that on so you guys can see. So it's a pretty simple process. There's just basically dropouts here. You line them up and you get that inside. And then So there's a bolt hole there that you're going to take this drive unit and you're going to line up the bolt hole in the drive unit with the bolt hole in the frame. So I'll get that lined up here. All right, so we've got that lined up. And the install process is pretty simple. You are given one simple bolt here. You can't screw this up. This is why I know that there's a problem, because it's pretty difficult to screw up one bolt that goes into one hole. It's not like you can install this wrong. But you put the bolt through, and then there's a nut that goes through on the other side. It's just a little flat nut that I'm dropping all over the floor here. And it'll screw in, and then it'll lock this resistance into place. So I'll put that in real quick. All right, so I put that bolt part way in just to kind of get everything squared up. And then you put this nut in there, into this little space here, if you can see that. With the flat side back and the rounded side towards you. And it'll push in kind of flush there, and it'll seat as soon as I get that bolt in there. So I will do that right now. So you could feel the bolt catch. I've got the nut in there, if you can see that right there. And then you'll just kind of tighten it up. It takes a 1/2-inch wrench to tighten that. So that's in there. And you can see that it's installed here. The next thing you do is you install the knob. So let me grab the knob and I'll show you how that goes in. Alright, so we'll put the knob in, and it comes with a piece that kind of looks like an Allen key. And I've seen this style before where you just hook the short end through here, and then this will go through that hole. So we'll just kind of tilt that back a little bit, and you can see how the long portion feeds through this hole. It'll stick out the other side, and then it includes this knob that you will screw onto here and tighten on up. Take a look at that. Take a look at how crooked that is now against the drive unit, because it's squared off against this base. You can only install this one way. So you can kind of see how the drive unit itself, for the resistance unit, it's crooked in some way. And I'm not sure if it's just that mounting area that's crooked or if it's something in the install. But it's definitely not straight. It's kind of one of the first things I noticed. At first I thought it was because the knob, I'll pull that back out. You see how it's rounded there? That I thought it was the knob itself, but as I looked closer at it, you can see that this is not quite squared off. So I don't think all the units are like this. Unfortunately, I think that I just happened to get one that was missed in inspection. But this is why I'm sending it back, because it's not seating to the rear wheel properly. There's no way to kind of get the rear wheel in there crooked. I shouldn't have to on a brand new trainer. So that's why I'm sending it back. But there's a few other things that I don't like about it, which is the reason I'm sending it back and not getting an exchange, but rather changing the trainer altogether. So I'll kind of show you that right now. So first and foremost is the tightness of this adjustment here. I actually only have this bolt hand tight, which is actually, it's likely wrong. You're supposed to tighten it down. And I did not over tighten it, but I used a wrench to tighten this until it couldn't move any further, just to kind of make sure it was in there strong. And when I did, it was actually really hard to move this back and forth. So when you're trying to put your rear wheel on here and you want to push this back, like right now you can hear it kind of clicking around because it's in there loose. It's not in there right. See how it's moving around? So when I tighten it up, and I actually use a wrench and tighten this down all the way, this is almost impossible to move. So I did not really like that. Again, that might have something to do with the fact that there's something a little bit off about the mounting portion on the frame, but that's one of the things I didn't like. Here's another thing I don't like. that's my finger pushing on the drive unit, which is pushing the whole trainer backwards. It's very rear heavy, which I understand is to be expected when you've got a drive unit in the rear, and it is just a consumer grade unit. But my issue is when I'm trying to put my bike on there, which is, you know, it's a 15-pound bike, so it's not super heavy. I'm taking this whole trainer with it trying to put it on. So I've got to try to hold the trainer down, and this thing's moving backwards, and then I've got to try to line that up. It's not the greatest situation in terms of stability. Once you get it on there, it's fine. Obviously, you've got the bike to weigh it down, but I just don't like how easily this kind of moves backwards. This is like no effort whatsoever, let alone putting a bike on there. So I've used the Powerbeams before. They're a lot more stable in the rear. You can kind of jostle them and jam your rear wheel in there without the front end of this thing kind of picking up. It's got more of a robust frame. So that was just another reason why I kind of decided to get away from the Magnus and go to the Powerbeam. So some of the pros that I found with it, just stupid minor stuff. It comes with a skewer with springs in it, so that's nice. So you don't have to worry about buying a trainer skewer. The power cable, I put it back away in here, but it's like a computer cable. So there's no ground necessary for it. I know that with the Powerbeam Pro, it uses a big AC adapter, which might be a little bit more clunky or take up more space. This is just more of a simple computer plug. They give you plenty of length on here too to kind of run it somewhere, so it's not obtrusive for your house. So that's definitely a pro for home use as well. So the other thing that I do like about this trainer was that the connectivity was really good. It did connect to my tablet via Bluetooth, which is a little bit more stable, I think, for the tablets and peripherals than the Ant Plus. So it connected quickly, the connection was stable. My issue was that it was literally, resistance was too strong for me to actually calibrate it. And the speed on the on my tablet matched the speed that I was showing from my speed cadence sensor on my head unit for my Garmin. So it was an accurate representation of what the speed was, but it was just taking way too much power to get there. You know, for me, when I've got to try to run 260 watts for 2 minutes, that's unreasonable for somebody whose FTP is usually around 205 to 210. I mean, my heart was going to blow up out of my chest. Like I couldn't finish. I mean, I'm just not capable of hanging on to that power for that long, especially right now in the off season, but I shouldn't have to. Like that's not reasonable. So when I tried to use it without calibrating it, the power, the output numbers were way low. They were about 40 watts low. So it wasn't even like I could skip the calibration. It felt smooth on the wheel. It wasn't like it was jerky, but it wasn't calibrated properly. You know, the output would have been useless, the data would have been useless, and that defeats the purpose of a smart trainer. On that note, another con that I noticed about this particular trainer is that when you use the virtual trainer app by CycleOps, there is a certain capacity for your peripherals, and that's to say, when you choose your trainer in the app, it'll only allow you to pair certain devices with it depending on what kind of training you had, which I thought was interesting because the tablet is the handler. Let me see if I can cue it up and show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I'm going to log into the virtual trainer app here, and I'm going to go to the settings. This is on Android, so it's set up a little differently. I've used it on an iPad as well. The readout is a little bit different, but hopefully you can follow along. So there's an area for virtual bike. You can also do this when you start a ride, but I'm just doing it here for the sake of ease. So when I program in the Magnus, there is a certain set of sensors that you can set up. This is not based on what it detects. This is actually based on what this trainer will allow you to pair with it. Some of them have less, some of them have more. So with the Magnus, it limits you to speed and cadence by itself, heart rate, or remote control. So these are the only 4 sensors that you can actually pair with virtual trainer when you have the Magnus controlled. When you select a different trainer, I don't know if it'll let me do this if I can't pair it. So I'll give you an example here. you can see that this trainer settings is set as CycleOps Phantom 5. It has removed, it looks like the speed cadence sensor from your capability of connection. Even though it thinks that it's going to be pairing up with the Magnus, this Phantom 5 profile will only let you use these 3 sensors. I know from experience, unfortunately, I don't think I can get it to open up here because there's no trainer attached yet, is that when you use the Powerbeam, it actually allows you to pair your own power meter to the readout on the Phantom or the virtual trainer app. Now, this might be something that is a deal breaker for some people not to be able to use their own power meter. For me, I think it's a nice to have. You know, if you want to remain consistent with your training, I've noticed that there's a little bit of a difference between indoor and outdoor training. First of all, performance. I mean, the obvious issue is that your ability to hold certain powers without that forward momentum on the bike, usually people will see a trend of maybe 10 to 20 watts lower indoors than they do outside. Sometimes they see things artificially high, depending on how their trainer is set up, how the resistance is set up. But that is an issue. But if you want to remain consistent from either trainer to trainer or trainer to outdoors so you can kind of get a feel, sometimes you want to use your own power meter as opposed to the power meter built into the unit itself. So because this is an electromagnetic drive unit and not electronic, the power is actually calculated based on speed, resistance, things like that. It's not an actual measurement of power out of your rear wheel. So you have the possibility of not being quite as accurate. Now, I always use my head unit in conjunction with the indoor power readouts from the app. But that being said, some people don't. Some people might not use their power meter on their bike, or they have it set up on an outdoor bike and then they have an indoor bike, or a number of different permutations where a person could not be able to reconcile their actual power against basically your virtual power. Something, Trainer Road does the same thing. It's not that it's inaccurate, but I know that it's not quite as real-time responsive as an actual power unit. Mine are in my pedals, or if you have it in your power tap wheel, it's going to be a lot more accurate to the second than you're going to get on the virtual trainer. So I do not like about the Magnus your inability to pair your power meter with your tablet or computer or whatever your platform you're using the virtual trainer app on. So bottom line, what do I recommend? Well, I'm going with the Powerbeam myself, and I've explained some of the reasons why I'm going for the Powerbeam. I went with the Powerbeam Bluetooth model. I do like the connectivity on the Bluetooth better than the Ant Plus because of the number of possibilities for interference because of all the different Ant Plus devices. If your trainer is connecting to your computer or your tablet via Bluetooth, it's a trusted format, it's a little bit more stable, and it's a little bit more universal as well. My particular tablet does read Ant Plus. My computer does not without the adapter. So now I'm using a Garmin adapter to be an Ant Plus reader, whereas, in the future, I don't want to have to use necessarily dongles or Ant Plus sticks. I can just use Bluetooth, which is going to be the industry standard for a reasonable period of time considering how many peripherals are out there. So I like the ability to just connect the trainer itself via Bluetooth. There is an Ant Plus model. Now let's talk about price. The Magnus comes in at $600. It's a very reasonably priced trainer for a smart trainer, and it's an entry-level price, but it is an entry-level product. I, for one, think that you're better off going with Powerbeam, which right now is really cheap. You can get the Ant Plus Powerbeam for like $500. I found it on Amazon. I found it on Competitive Cyclist. A lot of different sites are closing these out. They're probably gearing up for different trainers, and they're pushing that Hammer, which is $1,200, which is a direct drive trainer. So you could pick that up for $500, or I picked up the Bluetooth one for $700. A little bit newer model, and it's got the capability for Bluetooth as well as obviously your Ant Plus devices that'll pair. But for the pricing all being pretty similar, even though the Magnus is newer and allows for both Bluetooth and Ant Plus, unless you really need that, you're probably better off going with the Powerbeam because of the stability of the actual platform and trainer itself. It's more spec'd out in terms of a high-end trainer. Even though it's at a lower price point right now, it's still got a better specifications of an electronic drive unit instead of electromagnetic. It's got a more accurate power meter inside at the rear wheel as opposed to a calculation. It's a solid trainer. I've used it, so I'm assuming that they're coming out with either a newer version or they're really just trying to push that direct drive. And the reason I didn't go with the direct drive is really because I'm trying to lessen the amount of space I'm taking up with my trainer, which is another reason for getting rid of the Kinetic. The direct drive it's big. It's going to be there. It's in the way. It's a top quality unit. It's something that you're serious about your training, that you could definitely invest in if you've got the space, a garage, an isolated room for it. Definitely recommend it. I've seen them used before. I think they're great. But if you're looking for something that you can fold up and stow away and still get a really good quality workout, like my area, you're talking about 3 months of the year indoors, primarily indoors. If you're training 5 to 6 days a week, you better count on 5 of them minimum being inside. I think it's a solid quality product. So Magnus versus Powerbeam right now, considering the price points are the same or marginally more, I'd go for the Powerbeam 100%. I'm going to be sending these back, and when I get my Powerbeam in, I know there's a lot of videos on it because it's been out for a while, but I'll do an unboxing and show you guys what's in the box. All right, thanks for watching.